welcome to the Monday, April 7th Development Review Board. We have a nice full agenda this evening. Meredith is going to go over staff review of remote meeting procedures.
Yes. All right. So this is for anybody who is on remotely and who hasn't done this with us before, as well as anyone who might be watching via Orca Media. And for the audience that's here, I'm really sorry that we couldn't get the projection screen to work tonight, but we do have audio, so you'll be able to hear what everybody says. For anyone viewing tonight's Development Review Board meeting via Orca Media, you can participate in the discussion via the Zoom platform through either video or telephone access options. If you want the full video experience, you can plug in this link here into your web browser, and I'll get a notification that you want to come into the meeting. Alternatively, you can dial in on any phone using this phone number and the meeting ID here. If you have any problems accessing the meeting, please email me at mcrandall@montpelier-vt.org. I will be monitoring my email throughout the meeting. For everyone attending via Zoom, turning your video on is optional. And please note that if you do wish to speak, we've got several people on tonight who aren't applicants. So applicants, when your item comes up, the chair will ask for the applicants and who's there to talk. For anyone else who's a member of the public who might have comments on an application, if you wish to speak, we're going to ask that you raise your hand. And you can do that using your actual physical hand if your video is on, or use the raise hand button on your toolbar. And then when you do that, the chair will call on you. I may have to actually formally ask you to unmute with my little options here because we've had some Zoom bombing events recently. Please note that the Zoom chat function should only be used for troubleshooting or logistics questions. If you have if you do make comments on an application, once you're unmuted and before you talk, please make sure to state your name and potentially the address where you're located. That also lets us mail you afterwards if it's about an item on the agenda that has an official decision. And once the chair has recognized you, we do ask that you try and make sure that your comments are fresh comments if need be. You can also just say that you agree with something that someone previously has said, and then add some new things. That always works well too. In the event the public is unable to access tonight's meeting, and I would learn about that through my email, then the meeting will need to be continued to a time and place certain. I will now hand the meeting back over to the chair.
First, let the DRB members maybe introduce ourselves.
Rob Goodwin, Vice Chair. Joe Kiernan, Board Member.
Sharon Allen, Chair.
And we have Brian on remotely. Oh, sorry, hold on, you gotta unmute yourself. I've just, there you go.
Brian Jones, Board Member.
And Catherine.
Identifying yourselves.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to, don't touch it, just talk.
Catherine Burgess, Board Member, sorry I'm late.
Thanks. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is, has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda this evening? Those members? Yeah.
Yes. Motion to approve the agenda.
Great.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay, good. So tonight we have 3 sketch plan reviews, and then a slightly different application from the state of Vermont. I just wanted to review with people that a sketch plan review is a place where we're not going to make a decision tonight. I mean, we're here gathering information, we want to hear what you have to say, what we want to say, and that our biggest purview in this process is making sure that lots are not divided in such a way that they are no longer developable or that they create a problem with an existing lot. So that's like the narrow focus of what we've got here, but that is our primary function versus deciding tonight whether we can put a circus on one of those lots. So I think our first is 0 Beale Road.
Sorry, not our usual setup where we have a nice
No.
stand.
I'm glad I brought my board.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic.
So if we could, I'm just gonna read what it is, that this is a 0 Beale Road, owner applicant Shea Property Services LLC, care of Corey Shea, sketch plan review, for 2 parts of subdivision, and you are?
John Petrovsky, the design engineer with the Bowman Company, formerly Trudeau Consulting Engineers. The Shays were unable to make it tonight, but Aaron and Corey Shea, they may be looking on and listen that they're not available tonight.
Can you just give me a brief sort of description of what's going on?
Sure. Staff notes were very comprehensive, so I will be brief. But we're proposing 2 lots. Access is off of Via Road, Route 12's down here, so you drive up this road, and the first house site is here. It's a proposed 5-bedroom house with a 1-bedroom ADU, and then a little further up is the second home, which is a 4-bedroom house. We are utilizing on-site in-ground septic, a community system, and drilled wells. We already have our state wastewater permit for this property. We've done a boundary survey. You can see there's a lot of steep slopes that we're staying away from. It won't impact the steep slopes. Vio Road is, maybe the average grade is 10%. It's steeper in some areas, flat at the bottom, flat at the very top, and steep going up the hill. That exists. I've driven up and down it a few times during our gathering of field information. I was personally involved in the test bits and the topo and the design layout. The lots are, for the 5-bedroom house, it's the bigger lot, 6.15 acres, and the smaller lot is 2.86 acres. This is in the RL zoning district. The Wrightsville neighborhood, that doesn't mean a lot to me, but I'm sure it might mean something to you. It's off of Route 12. As I mentioned, Vio Road exists. No impact on steep slopes, no environmental issues. The amount of new impervious isn't high enough to warrant a stormwater discharge permit. The development zone is up top where it's very flat. It's flat all here, and it's a little steeper up here, and this site is wooded. The home is actually going in an open field that's there, and the part of the reason we're using the community system is the soils are deep sands and spectacular right here. We probably could have found the mound site up in the woods, but then we'd be tearing down trees, so we went with the community system concept. This house, I don't know if it matters, but Corey Shea and his family, their goal is to build a home and live there, and become residents of Montpelier. That's it, pretty brief.
So the existing home is the one that's closer to Elm Street, is that correct?
Yeah, down
I'm
here,
sorry.
it's off my map, but yes,
Okay.
there's an existing, we label the lots as 2 and 3. I imagine this is part of a prior subdivision, and there's a home down at the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
Yep. We don't expect traffic to be significant with two residential homes.
Do board members have a question they want to ask? I have to get myself arranged here.
No, I don't think a question necessarily. I remember when this first round of subdivision came, on this, we did a little bit of discussion about the stream buffer. I don't think it was contentious, at all, but I think, just making sure that that's, listening and you're here, that, understand that, development is significantly limited, if not completely prohibited, on the, near the stream there. Yeah, and, I think it doesn't need to be addressed now, but maybe some way of, calling that out in the plat at the end, to, just make sure that that's clear to any potential buyer. I think that we've not typically required the setbacks, dimensional setbacks to be shown on the final plat. But I forget what we've done as far as the stream.
So what we did before, that was for flood hazard.
Right.
If it was just a stream with water setbacks, we haven't flagged that because it's not a separate permit and it's not like a health safety issue.
Right.
So the Montpelier Conservation Commission is meeting next week. To discuss this and another application that's, sketch plan application that's before you tonight, to give their comments. So those will be folded into the record for the second round.
It's not really, it's not really an option to do anything once we hit the steep slope. It's really steep. So we're not gonna be anywhere near the river. We do show all of the zoning setbacks.
Yeah.
And there's a pretty good setback from the river.
No, obviously this doesn't appear this, really changes anything at all, it's, it's just there's two lots, affected by that, sort of line that was drawn before versus, versus one. So, yeah, it's no big deal. Just want to flag it for discussion.
Can I ask a couple questions?
If we, I need to just check and make sure the board members are done, and we absolutely love to hear from you.
And then we do not
Yeah.
have to
Okay.
it's all we've got.
So online, my board members back there, is that Brian?
Yeah, Brian's online, so I'll go back to your,
Okay, any comments or questions, Brian?
Brian, nope, shaking his head no.
Okay, great. You also got the staff notes?
Yes, I did.
You did, okay.
They're very comprehensive.
They're very comprehensive, they are. They're just great that way. I like through it, I didn't see anything else that sort of caught my attention, it's something that we should flag this evening. If other board members are set with this as far as it goes, then I would, open comments to the public.
Absolutely.
Great, if you could come up and sit up here so that you can talk to the.
Sorry, we didn't have a fifth microphone.
My name's Kevin Goss, I live at 3208 Elm Street, which is right below the project. It's a great place to build a house, I know, I grew up out there, spent a lot of time up there. The only question I have is, am I still gonna be able to access my property off of Elm Street and go up Via Road? Because I cut wood up there and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a town road.
Down the road.
Yeah, it's a town, it's a public right of way, it's a class 4 road.
Full road, yeah.
Yep, so that's not gonna change.
So the property line is, you can see the right of ways here, our
I
property line.
know, I know that like the
Yeah.
back of my hand.
Yeah, yes,
Oh, okay.
so yeah, it's still gonna be a public,
Okay,
and,
Walking, driving, whatever.
yeah,
I thought they threw up that road years ago.
nope,
Oh,
no, it's a class 4 road, and there's, Department of Public Works has had some comments, there's gonna need to be some discussion about, what needs to be done to improve what's there now for the increased traffic. So that's gonna be part of between now and final, some discussions that'll happen, but you're still gonna be able to access it.
Okay, great. My second question is, last summer they did do some work on the road up there, and I got a lot of runoff in my backyard. So I don't know if that can be addressed. I haven't walked up there for a year or so.
Yeah, the road is not very stable, and we got some really, I think, terrible rain events. So we drove up and down it. I'm not aware of any, leveling that out, or I know there's a couple of culverts that are failed and need to be replaced. We will be doing work, and there'll be an erosion plan with, stone check dams and all the fixings. I think we're gonna try, my goal if I'm involved is to avoid concentrating the runoff and get it across the road in as many spots as I can. Just because when you concentrate runoff, you cause damage.
Right.
But not much construction activity other than me digging test pits. I'm not aware of anything else. Maybe they replaced a culvert, maybe they did.
That's what I was wondering.
I don't think so. I don't think they spent any money on it because, except with me. And they weren't happy about that. No, I'm only kidding. But yes, it's a steep road, it's a very valid concern. Gravel, steep roads and gravel really need to be handled carefully.
As long as that gets addressed, you know.
So as city staff, I can also circle this back up through Department of Public Works so that they know that there are issues with the neighbors of what's happening up there right now.
They kind of control this road.
They control
we-
what happens to it.
Yeah.
So.
But to the
Thank
extent
you.
possible, my goal was a lot of culverts.
I have no problem with the project. Like I said, it's a beautiful place to build a home. Other than that, I guess I'm all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Second,
you.
one question for you, Kevin.
Yes,
Does that go all the way through to the
It
Porter
used
Road?
to.
Not anymore?
the culvert at the end at Porter Road's been out for years. I used to actually run a dune buggy up there all the time. And, no, you can't get all the way through, which might be a good idea to look into, because then you could access Neil Road from Terrace Street or Porter Road.
Have to coordinate with Middlesex.
Two towns, yeah. I don't think we're going there.
They classified it as a trail prior to these, so I don't know if they even do anything with trails.
Let's see, Sean? Beckett?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, hold on, he just undid his video. You want Sean still to talk?
Yeah, please, hi, Sean.
All right, so Sean, you should be able to unmute now. Awesome.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody. We live on Unit 1 at the bottom of VO Road there. Just wanted to flag a couple things about VO Road. The previous owner, before selling it to the Shays, they did put a little bit of work into that road just to remove organic material, kind of get it passable. They did some culvert work, but nothing that really redirected the flow or anything like that. So really minimal stuff, as the fellow just mentioned. And yeah, we just wanted to flag that the city has been, maintaining that bottom portion of VO Road, which as neighbors there, we certainly have appreciated. In the winter, the snow plow builds up snow right up against VO Road to the point where you'd have to, the pile of snow is in the way of accessing up the hill to the slot 2 and 3, and so there'd have to be some conversation around what to do with that snow. But we just want to voice our support of the city maintaining the ability to maintain that road for those of us down at the bottom of it. That's all.
Thank you, Sean. Catherine, did you have a question, comment?
I had a question back from the staff report. I think we had the suggestion around getting clarity on the decision on the shared septic design.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
why
sounded like-
I didn't go into it too deep, but part of what I mentioned was we found a sand deposit right here. And surprisingly, the water table is high here and out here it's, I could probably design a mound system out there, but it would be big and it would require clearing all the trees.
Okay.
So we made the decision that a community system in-ground conventional seemed like less of an environmental impact, and it allowed us to maintain gravity and avoid pump stations and more complicated systems.
Thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing your information with us.
You're welcome, thank you. Have a good night.
thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our list, we have skip and review of 2 parcel subdivision. The applicants are Nicholas Lowe and Emily Warner. The applicants want to come up?
So we have Nick on remotely. Actually, I see Nick, and so hold on 1 second. Here we go. There you go.
Hi, everyone.
So if you could tell us just a kind of a brief introduction to this project, that'd be great. Nick?
Sure. So this is a just under 6 acre lot that we have. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Just under 6 acre lot with an existing house, single family residence, with an apartment attached to it. And so we're looking at roughly dividing the property in half. And on that new lot, we're working on getting a wastewater and water supply permit for another single-family residence and potentially an ADU. And thanks, Meredith. And you can see on that this rough sketch here, there's a brown line kind of cutting up through this image. To the left of that dashed line, in the satellite image, it's a Washington Electric power line.
Okay.
So we're looking at that already cleared area as a potential driveway location for the curb cut, and then coming up a little bit into the property, and on that north side of that power line, having a site for single family residence. And if you go up into the left in the corner there along Perkins Road, there's a little bit of a wetlands buffer in that area, so we'd be staying away from that. And then along the further north end of the property, there's a little bit of steep slopes, so we'd be staying away from that. So the idea is to kind of stick closer to the area that's already cleared with the power line, and have fairly simple access in from Perkins Road, which is Perkins Road itself is relatively flat. Hopefully that's easy access to get in.
Okay. Just trying to make sure I understand.
And the zoning district here, I think it's a 2-acre minimum lot size, and we'd come out with 2 lots a little under 3 acres each.
Okay. And so the lot on the left, is the circle represent where the house is potentially gonna be?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I raise a point of order that, for the participants in the meeting, the public to not be able to see what y'all are looking at as you discuss these things is not okay, because we can't inform our own comments. It's not the worker's job to see that the room is equipped.
Noted, thank you. People, members of the public need to see a picture, please feel free to share mine.
There is a packet that was on the
We can't see
table.
where the cursor is moving and what's being referred to specifically.
That is true, there was a.
I understand that, Steve. There's nothing I can do about it right
Going forward, you
now.
can make a resolution, a vote among the board to not let it happen again, is what I would ask for.
I think we can just accept that we'll try and not have it again. Other board members have questions about this particular application?
It's pretty straightforward. So Nick, the little sliver, which is, I guess, the funkiest corner in Montpelier, if you look at the map. Who owns, do you know who owns across that? Is that part of the adjoining lots, like across the road in other towns, or it would be the
Yes,
Triangle?
the needle,
No.
no, on the,
this one.
yeah, on the east side of Perkins Road.
Yeah, so across the road, across Perkins Road, that's actually Carla Ocaso. And that little triangle is still in Montpelier, and then her property continues to the east there, but that becomes East Montpelier.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the public here who wanted to ask questions or give input? Application? Looking through the application, it looks like that been made aware of where things need to be filled in for the final applications. And a lot of staff comment, which I think is super helpful for the applicant, is things that must be included on the application for the next step. In terms of things like, include existing electric and data lines, and that's all for the next step, so it's not for this one. So comments here, I think we're pretty much all right with this. Do you have any questions for the board, Nick?
I don't think you're too.
Did you have any questions for the board, Nick?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Hey. I am gonna say thank you then for bringing your application in front of us, and we'll move on to our next site plan review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, our next is, say this right. The applicant is Down Street Housing and Community Development. They come up to the table, please. You can just grab one of these other chairs, bring it right out.
There we go.
Everybody.
Just grab them anywhere.
Trying to think, I don't have a. You see there's something in the closet.
Short a board because we thought there was gonna be a easy.
I thought there was gonna be an
Right.
option too.
But if we could hold it up, or if we can fashion something quick. Have clips, like a paper clip will be the cover of a tote there, might be. Sorry for the delay.
I've got a black. So there's one on that table right there.
Sure.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, we moved here because I was concerned that the council chambers would not be big enough for everybody who was gonna want to attend.
We can deal with it, I just want everyone to be able to see. Let's go one at a time, and let's start with that one. We need to get this one up there with that. They both say the same thing. Thank you, Jeff.
And I can share for people online, if you just give me a second to switch out my items.
Okay, Meredith, I've got an extra printout too, if you want to circulate
Yeah,
that around
that
again,
that
so.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Kind of stood there and talked and talked a little bit. Full team effort.
Thank you, guys. Yeah,
Okay.
usually we're higher tech than this. Which one do you have? That one, the major one. Okay.
We have the overall.
Okay.
Yep, that way I'm showing the same thing to people remotely.
Would be super helpful if you guys could introduce yourselves.
Yes, I'm Chris Austin with Grenier Engineering. I'm here helping Down Street Housing Community Development.
Stephen Cohen, Down Street Housing and Community Development.
Charles Whitaker with Grenier Engineering.
Charles does more than just hold the plan, but for now, he's helping us with that. We do have John Grenier in attendance too. I don't think he needs to speak, but he is here.
Okay.
Also with our team.
So if you could just give a brief description of what the project is?
Sure. The project here is for a 3-lot subdivision of 9 Heaton Street. The site currently has the Washington County Mental Health Services building on it with a large parking lot and some undeveloped area to the northeastern corner of that property. So the subdivision is to propose a lot 1 of 1.98 plus or minus acres that will contain the existing facility and parking. And then a lot 2 and a lot 3 over here in the northern corner that is proposed for future single-family residential dwellings. So lot 2 is they're actually about the same lot size, 8,300 square feet, that's 0.19 acres. This is the Res 3000 zone Heaton Street neighborhood. So our lot sizes are over double the minimum. We provide we exceed the amount of frontage needed for all 3 proposed lots. The coverage as designed here on this plan is met for all 3 lots. We have a common driveway here accessing the 2 new development lots for residences. We have done that at a 16-foot travel lane width, which meets the building inspector and fire chief codes. The property line for this new development essentially is in the center of the proposed shared driveway. The plan shows the applicable building setbacks for each building shown. Each lot has 2 building zones shown that either meet the minimum setback to the frontage and side yard. And on the interior there, we've just restricted those building areas to be outside the gravel parking driveway area. So those interior setbacks, where those deviate from the normal setbacks, exceed the district standards. The project is proposed to have municipal water and sewer. We've had DPW review some options for the best case scenario to do that. We've landed on so-called option number 2, which involves a small off-site easement here to the northeast to access an existing sewer main. The water main exists right in Heaton Street, and we'll have direct water line service to the new property there. Each building site, is assigned 2 parking spaces in this layout. They're all within the 2 lots proposed, some are gonna be by shared agreement on lot 3 benefiting lot 2. This is a currently wooded site, the existing tree lines are shown on this plan. There will be some effort to retain a few trees here or there, this is a very small site, so there's not a lot of natural tree retainment shown here or anticipated, to be honest. And we do understand that we're really here to do the subdivision standards. We've, as this plan shows, done quite a bit of pre-review with Michelle's department, Meredith, and the fire chief and public works to quickly pivot toward, construction level permitting once we have the lots approved.
Okay. Just so that I understand exactly where you are, that existing Washington County mental health building is up here? Where's the?
Yeah, if I can
Yeah,
see
yeah,
where.
I see.
Yeah.
I got it, thank you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the large office building there, and this is their large park
Yeah.
here. And then they still have quite a bit of open space in there too. For a city lot, it's outside.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the existing building and all, so. Nothing changes with the existing building, its access or parking as a result of the subdivision. There.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you can show them, we've got printouts.
Thanks, Charles.
And screens.
Did you have any questions, having gone through the staff report?
Actually, we did have a question resulting from, statements under the shared parking. Item C, And staff report says that development creating more than twice the minimum parking required for uses on that parcel must be approved by the board or via shared parking agreement. We understand that the few of the parking spaces provided are on the neighboring lot. They're very adjacent to the building they're gonna serve. And it is the full plan of Down Street to have a shared parking agreement here. And so we would like some clarity on timeline wise, like if all the other construction does not require DRB review, we were hoping not to go to the DRB to review that, if possible.
Okay.
Or, you know, again, the way it says or shared parking agreement, does that
Yeah,
clarify the DRB is not required?
Well, the DRB would have to approve a shared parking agreement,
Okay.
so,
but a
but,
shared parking agreement would be is acceptable.
Yeah.
But we would have to
I mean,
say that.
yeah, I mean theoretically, that approval would probably be combined with the final subdivision approval.
I would think that would be
Yeah.
useful.
That was
I
my-
think you could do that as part of that application.
That was my
And-
next question.
Yeah, and get it, you know,
When do I get to
and get it approved for, I mean, it would probably be for a certain max build out, right? Cause this, in the shared parking agreement, you'd have to have a draft of it to be reviewed.
You certainly look like you'd have enough parking.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to overpark, but, you know, I realize in modern rules here, it seems like a unit is provided one space. Given shared access, small site, providing 8 spaces for 4 units makes a lot of practical sense in our view and doesn't create additional impervious surface. It's what's really necessary to give everybody a place to park to keep the common driveway open.
I have a question around, the connectivity with the parking and the decision around the location of the units and the proposed site division. Did you look at, or can you talk us through whether there was any scenario for some of the parking space instead to, have a different type of unit division? Sorry, that was unclear. Right now, we're seeing all the proposed development with the new units and the new parking in this area that, in this previously wooded area. I was just curious if you had any scenarios where it was a parking lot that would have taken on some of the development.
I don't think that we've had any real conversation with trying to share their parking. That doesn't seem.
We've had discussions about temporary use, but not as permanent use. I have been by this site a number of times and see that it gets plenty of use from.
Okay. So yeah, so the site is, the parking is utilized on the site.
It is, yeah.
In terms of also just to ease of easements and future ownership, I mean, the product here is to hopefully have homeowners owning buildings and properties. So like a shared easement to the neighboring office's parking lot is sort of like a bit of a tangled web when you could just park next to a building on your lot or, by shared 20 feet away from your lot. In our opinion, it organizes it better, less easements, less people involved, less concerns or arguments that could arise, essentially. Like, say we could work out an agreement to park over here, but then an office member parks in, or the homeowner parks in an office spot and just something.
Yeah, no, I think I was more curious if the parking on the site was underutilized, if you had looked at whether the housing could go to make it a smaller, large parking lot.
That completely makes sense.
Yeah.
We don't feel has a great opportunity given the use of the lot.
Okay.
Any other comments from board members? Keep going to look at the screen behind this.
Old habit, right?
Yeah.
And if there's anything else we need to point out to you and
Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this? Yeah.
Questions, do you want us to go up?
Yeah, if you can just pull a chair up and,
I can.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
there's only one microphone.
Take orders here.
just for business sense, we're almost from the same.
You can identify yourselves first?
Yes, so my name is Stephen Perry,
I'm Emma Perry.
and we're currently in the process of purchasing the 19 Keaton Street lot, right next door to where the Down Street homes are going to be possibly be placed.
Where?
The 19th
19
Heaton Street, the big,
Oh, okay, thanks.
so units 4 and 3 being right on our property line.
Okay.
So first thing we want to say is we're in full support of the project in terms of building housing that's affordable for people in Montpelier. And we look forward to having those neighbors there. We are wondering if, since the trees are going to be more or less taken completely down, part of the property value in the place here, we wanted the seclusion a little bit of that property. So we were looking to see if there's a possibility for us to have a fence placed up in that location or some sort of a barrier to block that 150 feet from the road to the end, which would be roughly the end of Unit 4 down by Washington County Mental Health, that parking lot down there, to continue to have that secluded area for us as we build a family and want to have a space for that family to run around and play.
Well, that, I'm pretty sure that's gonna come into play when the permits come in for the, or is it now?
Well, because
Not
there's
now?
a lot of times, so just for everybody here, a lot of the time the board does for two small subdivisions, they leave landscaping decisions for later. In this particular instance, because it is part of the subdivision review, I think that the board has, can
Say, we like that.
specify, like, say, if this is the site plan that ends up being proposed, here is, what we are gonna require for landscaping, for shielding,
Screening,
for screening for the developments of our adjacent neighbors. I mean, that is something that the
Are there
board
any
has the
plans?
option to do.
Are there any plans for that screening to be built along that?
We don't currently have that right now.
Okay.
We are obviously, we
Open
were,
to- yeah.
Meredith let us know about your comment, your
Yeah.
emails. Stephen and I have talked. Just given how small the site is, it's hard to imagine that we're gonna get to leave too many of the natural trees, which is honestly normally the way we try to do things. It's just very tight in the site to do so. So I think we just need to have further conversation on the solution. I think the Down Street sounds willing to participate in some form of screening. We were hoping to get, some direction from the board and hear your folks' concerns, here in person too.
Just curious what the setbacks are in Montpelier from,
Those are 5-foot side yard setbacks.
so yeah, pretty close, yeah.
So, again, I don't know, it might be a side conversation to come up with something that's amenable to everybody. I don't know if the board wants to give us any direction. I feel like in Montpelier, fences are a fairly common solution, but I don't know everything about that or what people feel about it.
Fences or, shrubbery or, other kind of greenery, cedars, gardens, or whatever.
Yeah, cedars are very
And-
popular.
As far as, that seems like a really reasonable question. I would hope that you guys would be able to work that out among yourselves. Like I said, it seems like a reasonable request to me to have some kind of screening effective between there. Because it is, it's very tight in there. So it's like pretty much, hi, there's your window,
Exactly.
So it would be
We'll
nice.
say it is the residential neighbor that exists to the site. It's one of the reasons this site, in our opinion, works quite well, is it is not on top of a whole bunch of other residents.
Right.
So if we can manage to screen this one real obvious side, we'd be doing a good job.
Yeah, I think it's one member of the board, leave it up to you whether you wanna deal with it as a division, or clearly, it's multiple units, would we be back for a major site plan for this now?
No, because it's two parcels. So 2 units per parcel.
Units per parcel.
So this
Okay.
is the board's chance to put in a landscaping
Right.
condition, because otherwise landscaping doesn't come into play
So
at all,
And I've-
it's further
in
down the way.
previous cases, we've done this where we've had subdivisions into 2 lots and 2 houses, and we just figure, okay, there's 2 we're working on, it's not something we need a landscaping plan for. This, because the whole project is 4 units, and it does seem tight, I would like to recommend that the board say something about screening on that one back corridor.
I think that makes sense, because, I mean, it's different now than it has been with, because ordinarily for, more, like, you can put more units on a lot without coming before us.
Right.
Again.
Yeah.
So the subdivision process is the only, really trigger to have this conversation.
Sure.
So whatever you come up with, I think we'll be into.
Okay, well, I think that's part of the sketch plan review here, is
Right.
feeling this out and coming up with the solutions that work for everybody. So we're comfortable with that, and I think we'll talk to Stephen, and I'm sure we can correspond with you folks to come up with what we want to present back in the final process.
That sounds good.
Sounds great.
And
Everybody can,
can loop those through me, because some privacy fence needs are taller than the standard that would be allowed, so we can tie that into the final application to get those approvals.
well, that might be
Right.
a DRB topic as well.
Hmm? Well,
Like that's
right,
a review,
right.
extra review at a certain height. for
Oh,
instance.
right, and so we would just fold that in to the final subdivision application to get that blessed approval for that taller fence, if that's what you go for instead of plantings.
These units are 2 stories.
Single stories.
Single stories, okay.
Which again, we're not quite to that stage for subdivision, but Downstreet has gone very far into the design of this, the intention of getting it built soon, but also to give everybody the ability to know what's happening. So like, these buildings aren't finally 100% designed, but this is very representative of what's being demanded in the single story.
And somewhere along the way, I mean, obviously there's 4 on the plan here, but we heard murmurings that it was maybe gonna downsize, but it doesn't sound like with this
No, I
current
think we're
plan.
pretty,
At
yeah,
4.
yeah, we're looking
Okay.
like this is about what it's built like.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I think-
one question.
The only other question I just had per the staff report, and I think everybody is pretty comfortable with it because it's per DPW really, but we did the pre-review meetings to determine this could be a B71 commercial standard driveway here. And so we are planning on meeting a bunch of conformance with that with a paved apron. We did have a question about the radiuses. I don't know if the board is interested in that too much or not, but basically by using the 20-foot radius that's required, it actually creates a mouth at the street here that's 50 feet wide. Funny enough, they want us to have a 40-foot width. It's just the way Eaton Street curves, I guess. It's kinda, so what we'd actually like to propose is a slightly lower than 20-foot radius to get us a 40-foot width of the street. We just wanted to kind of get that into the discussion. It's a little bit on the technical line.
Yeah. I'm thinking that that's probably something at DPW.
So if they we get it to them and they say that's good with us, we'll be okay.
Yeah, DPW blesses that.
And we're good.
They're just about there already, I just wanted to bring it up that it's like one of the only project details that isn't quite to the scale.
You said, what was the radius you said? For
20 foot.
Because I'm seeing for urban, on that standard, it's a 10-foot theoretical radius. 30 rural.
B71,
I thought it was I wouldn't argue with you if we can go to 10. Well, it would get us to that 40-foot width. So
Yeah, that's how I
10
read it here,
would
the
actually work.
theoretical radius, it says 30 foot, and this is for a 2-way undivided commercial drive. Theoretical radius, 30-foot rural, 10-foot urban.
Maybe that's why it's not adding up. So if the urban standard is 10, that will get us to the 40-foot width, and that actually answers the question more or less. one of the reasons I brought it up. Okay.
All right, I think if everybody's sat here and there's no further comment.
We have comment from the public,
Oh,
I don't know if there's any
okay.
comment in public in person.
Okay.
That's your, is that it, in person?
I'll have a comment.
Okay, let's you use first, Steve.
Yeah, Steve Whitaker, I just noticed that one of the more aggravating things of this infill development is, any infill development, is the dumpsters and the time at which the Casella trucks come and the noise they make. I don't see, and I understand that they have no plan for dumpsters for these 4 buildings of housing. And that's gonna either encroach upon parking or encroach upon something. And it seems like it's something that should be thought about for quality of life for the neighbors. I don't have a horse in this race, but I know that that's one of the more annoying factors that often gets overlooked, and then there's little you can do about it afterwards.
Thank you.
Is there any requirement for dumpsters for single residences?
We can have individual trash service if we want it.
Yeah, there's so,
Just take your cans out to the front?
Right.
do you want me to answer
Yes.
based on the regs?
Please.
So the subdivision regulations don't have anything about that. The only time those service area locations come up would be if we trigger major site plan. If site plan, like minor site plan, which would be 3 units and up or commercial, I can look at it sort of in landscaping and screening, in that landscaping and screening standard. But the landscaping and screening discussion under subdivision, it's much narrower.
Okay.
So it doesn't, it really, it doesn't come up. It's not one of the things that the board is supposed to be looking at for this, because the planning commission basically made the decision that when you have 2 units on a parcel, we're not gonna layer on all those additional requirements and hoops for people.
Okay.
I think it's just a useful comment to keep in mind.
I think it's a valuable comment. We are pointing on like individual owner services, not a dumpster receptacle.
And do we have an online question?
Yeah, so, hold on, let me just take off my share screen for a minute, hold on. Sorry, I think it's Pete, he sent me an email, so it's, give me 1 second. To minimize things, so Pete has his hand raised, so I'm gonna ask Pete to unmute. And Pete, if you can you just turn on your video, so.
Can you hear me?
I can, do you have video option or not?
I suppose I do. Hold on, let me.
Okay. Nope, we just had some Zoom bombing and stuff lately, so just trying to make sure. You're the one who sent me the email, right?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, so, I can.
Yeah, I had 2 comments. If the board and Chairman Allen can just maybe I can just get through them both, and then you can maybe address them. The applicants can address them, and the board can ask. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The first comment I have is, again, looking at the parking and the building, and my concern, as a budding neighbor and also a owner of property in downtown Montpelier that got destroyed in a flood in 2023, is that the non-pervious surfaces that are being created there that abut a stormwater collector and wetland that is behind my property at 5 Heaton Street and behind 9 Heaton Street, that I'm concerned about the downwater flow. So I would ask if, before the board receives a final application, they maybe request a hydrology report on the effect of the non-pervious surfaces that are going to affect the downwater stream through the collector and then via the stormwater collection down Liberty, because it has backed up many times, and I'm just concerned about creating this much non-pervious surface above Montpelier, what that would do. So I don't know if that's been requested by the development board already, or is it part of the application? I haven't seen the application, full application, I apologize, but I'm not sure if there's a hydrology report included. And my second comment, and again, that pertains to the email I sent you, Meredith, was just, again, we received a letter, and I appreciate the reach out from Downstreet, because, again, we do support community development in town. We're lifelong members nearly of Montpelier and understand the need for affordable homes. But, as a neighbor, and then quoting the letter we received, it said, our goal is for these homes to blend naturally with the character and aesthetic of the neighborhood. I circled just a kind of a concentric circle around the area, and there's about 15 homes, and all of them except one, which is a 1.5 story home. They're all 2-story homes, single family homes, excluding of course the commercial property. So I was concerned about the projection that these are fitting into the neighborhood of 2-family homes with a median, assessment rate of over $450,000. That bringing in a subdevelopment of single, single-story homes is really fitting into this neighborhood, and maybe this is really the subdivision that Montpelier needs. So these were my 2 comments that I wanted to bring up at the board tonight, and I would love the feedback from both the applicant and the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a character of the neighborhood for subdivision, but I don't believe that there is any building review that would involve that.
He's just talking about the odor, and I think that, how tall are how tall are the buildings?
There's,
4
no,
stories?
they're single-story buildings.
Single-story
Yeah.
buildings, okay,
I don't know, 18-inch feet or something.
Yeah.
Peak roof.
okay.
Yep.
All right, and in terms of, water, I know it's super frustrating for people who lived here through the flood of 2023. It seems like everything is falling apart and water doesn't go anywhere where it's supposed to. But I also feel like I'm sort of reacting to that as citizens of Montpelier, like, oh my God, everything's gonna flood, oh my God, everything's gonna flood. And it's good for us to be prepared for floods and to look at where stormwater goes and to make sure that we get that done correctly. So, and the regulations don't require a stormwater plan for this site. They wouldn't require it because it's 2 units. And there's some other ways, Captain and I talked about that at the last meeting, about other ways to get involved with water and where water's gonna go and where water's gonna be in your neighborhood. The resilience,
There's like resilience groups.
the resilience groups that are in different areas in Montpelier are talking about planning for water and flooding and just trying to recognize what certain neighborhoods need. That might be a good place to check in on that also.
So I can probably just speak to this a little too,
Great.
from our project proposal side.
Right, so Pete, thank you for that question, and you're right, it's one of the major concerns that we considered when we were making this development is that we know the issues that Montpelier face, right? So if we look to the south of the development, we have.
Hold on 1 second, and I can share my screen and mimic what you're doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
just give her a second to share.
Okay,
Yeah, so to the south of the development, we have fashioned a collection system, so to slow down or reduce that threat for the abutting neighbors to collect the water from the impervious areas. So we have considered or taken into consideration the impact that the development would cost in terms of flooding that area.
Right, so that stormwater basin shown there will attenuate the project runoff and store it there and slowly release it back to the natural drainage path already existing on the mental health side. So the other point is that there's a very small amount of impervious surface here. And actually, if you eye it up, it would all fit within that existing parking lot next to it. our lot totals are only 16,000 square feet, and we have 50%-ish coverage. So I don't have an exact impervious number out of the top of my head, but we're at well less than a quarter acre, I think. Yeah, we are. We're at 8,000 or 9,000 square feet. We don't need a state of Vermont stormwater permit, but like Charles just spoke to, and Downstreet, wanted us to plan for this. We have created a stormwater collection for this project.
And to add, like, we are in discussions with the DPW, to see if that, we've produced or provided a report on, the flood impact, so we're just waiting for correspondence there. So we have it in the back of our heads to make sure that.
That's great. All right.
Brian, actually, has something he wants to say. Yep.
Brian, go ahead.
There was a part two to Pete's comment, was there?
So the part 2 was about property values
Oh, okay.
and how that goes to the standard of character of the neighborhood. And actually, Brian Jones, who's a member of the DRB, I think actually, he emailed me to say, I think he wants to address that.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yes, Brian, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, thanks, Meredith. I'm guessing everyone can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah, not there in person tonight, sorry, I'm doing multitasking here. Yeah, so very quickly, I think my response is really just more of a building on the sentiment, the questions, maybe even some of the concerns on line item 25, section 3507. When I look at the way the development is organized along the road, and when I see the kind of single drive, yes, one curb cut, but a lot of additional driveway, I think, and parking that's associated with these 4 buildings, it seems to me that if you study the surrounding neighborhood, which admittedly I live fairly close to, you find that a more typical pattern is that 2.5-story kind of vernacular New England house. Now, there are 1.5-story houses in the neighborhood as well, but they're kind of an anomaly. And most of these houses are accessed with maybe a two-car wide driveway, right? So you would access it, and it would be kind of in front of or adjacent to the house. That's the pattern that is consistent in this neighborhood, and I think that, but admittedly, in order to achieve that pattern, there may only be one solution, which is to propose 3 houses which radiate, around this curve, similar to the way that the ones on each end do. So I'm just wondering, I guess, as maybe a question to the board and also to the applicant, is this something? Well, I'll just ask the applicant: is this something that you've looked at? Could you propose would you be able to propose a development with 3 houses that were all kind of radiating around that road with smaller driveways that really minimize the amount of pavement and the kind of cul-de-sac pattern, which is not typical of this neighborhood?
Oh, typical or not, we think access is good. Not to be cute about it, but it's a 16-foot wide driveway, which is 2-car width. To, parking spaces on site for the residents so they don't have to go fight other people for parking spaces. And provide some area to turn around on your site. I guess we really tried to focus on the minimizing to 1 curb cut and provide a common driveway access to the 2 lots is really how we approached it, to be honest. It feels like what you almost might be asking for is a second curb cut or something to provide the access. It just seems like that would be
frowned upon in other ways, would be my opinion, but.
Just the other question I had to that point is, in terms of the neighborhood that that's in, it's often not, can you pull up what neighborhood that is in? In terms of it's often not just one little part of what you're seeing in the neighborhood is included in that neighborhood, so there's a variety of housing styles within one neighborhood.
Yeah, we pull it up as in a street view, or, I mean, I can't share it very well,
No, I
unfortunately.
know, I'm just thinking about the regulation that defines.
Yeah, that's in the stuff, the definition of the neighborhood is in here.
Okay.
It doesn't go into the styles of houses. It talks about that the old Heaton Hospital, now owned by Washington County Mental Health, and the current Heaton Woods Long-Term Care Facility are key aspects of this neighborhood. And that those offer higher residential densities when compared to the surrounding neighborhoods. So in general, I mean, we've had this come up in subdivision before where there's the zoning described neighborhood with a capital N. And that's typically supposed to be the focus for the board. There are sometimes comments from other people who don't live quite there, but give me a second, because I can probably, I can share it online and then people can come up who are interested and look at my computer. So just give me a second to pull up the full zoning map. So this was a neighborhood, a zoning neighborhood defined that was created, I think last year or the year before in one of the recent amendments to the zoning. And it's a pretty small area. Sorry, I've gotta take a bunch of layers off of my map or nobody's gonna understand what they're looking at. And it's really mostly the Heaton properties, or the Washington County Mental Health properties. So, sorry. It's slow here when I don't have everything. Alright. So. Here we go. Give me one sec. So this blue is really the Heaton neighborhood is really just those two parcels.
That's how I understand.
And that's typically what's being considered, and it's what are you doing with those two parcels? And there's a suggestion about making sure that, you know, there's a large protected area, like a bunch of this land here is conserved, protected, you can't do anything with the land to the west. It does say the proposed development should protect the conserved portions of the neighborhood, so that's the conserved land that's over here. As well as minimize or mitigate impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. So yes, the surrounding neighborhoods come into play and you're trying to minimize the impacts on those. But when you're looking at character of the neighborhood and settlement pattern, right, the character of the neighborhood is in here. And then, but they talk about that these two parcels offer higher residential densities, like there's an ability to build higher density on these two parcels because they are so big than maybe what's been done so far. So that's the whole, that's the big overview of what, in this case, character of the neighborhood is all about. So there's a understanding that the development that happens on these two parcels isn't necessarily going to be the same as what's surrounding it, but that when you look at potential impacts, there should be some efforts to minimize or mitigate potential negative impacts.
I mean, the other
I don't know if
part-
anybody here wants to just come take a peek, because I can't project, I'm really sorry.
I think the other thing that's important to note here is that the purpose of residential redistrict is to encourage infill residential development with a range of housing choices while preserving each neighbor's distinct character and quality. And it seems to me that you are increasing the range of housing choices in that neighborhood in a way that is not is correct. It's a good thing to do there, I guess, I would say.
Well, that's exactly what Downstreet's purpose is, honestly, here, is for a range of options for people in the community in general, and I think that they've had us arrange a site plan with the parking being on the site and have some ability to turn around in there while still really having a small impervious footprint, really keeps what this development will be doing on its own property versus searching for parking out on the street or in some other place, or, you know, that kind of thing, or having a traffic jam issue with driveways and deliveries and such. So, you know, we really tried to target that with the project.
Okay. Pete, did you want to add something else?
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you for showing that, the rezoning that happened last year for the 2 parcels. But again, I think that seems to be so limited in scope that I think you would have to address the surrounding neighborhoods because, again, 2 parcels is not a neighborhood by most definitions, especially since the 2 parcels are commercial only. So I think when we're looking at this as a development project, that I think we would also need to encompass the residential portions of the abutting neighborhoods. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to throw that back to the board as just to comment on.
Yeah, I'll back up your earlier comment, Sharon. I think when looking at the larger neighborhood, there are units of a range of sizes. There are some single family, there's, you know, some single story as well, and a lot of the kind of missing middle multifamily with like 6 to 8 units. So I, if anything, when thinking about character of the neighborhood, would almost imagine this being higher density than what it is. So, you know, to me, this fits into the larger character of the neighborhood, and you're looking neighborhood-wide at housing availability and housing choice.
I think there's some very small, one.
Yeah, there's some smaller, lower units, and then there's like larger units with, more, that go
Multiple
further
apartments.
back and have more, shared parking across the larger building.
Yeah, and I think Steve can speak to it better than me, I'm sure, but I think Downstreet has a multitude of housing in the general area to begin with, and like, they're focusing on that there's a shortage of this kind of home that a first time or second time home buyer can get a hold of in the community. Instead of living in, and we're nothing against the bigger multifamilies, those are great, but it's trying to target the other range of, units available, lots available. Like, so the goal is for somebody to own a piece of property here, not just a unit inside a building. Understanding that units inside buildings are great too, but providing that range.
Meredith?
So to just take a step back, because I think we've gone a little off track here.
Sure.
This is sketch plan review of a subdivision. The subdivision is just the division of the land. So this whole character of the neighborhood discussion has nothing to do with the potential houses that will go on there. It really doesn't. That's not what the board's approving. It's how the parcels are being divided and arranged. So the shared driveway aspect is something that could be commented on, but again, that's gonna be a whole separate permit to get that driveway. If the shared parking or the screening come up in the final application as part of the final subdivision, those come in, and you could talk about character of the neighborhood and having shared parking, or character of the neighborhood and landscaping, but what houses are gonna be built on there is not part of the subdivision. It's here to show and demonstrate that the lots can be subdivided and developed in future, and yes, they do have a pretty concrete plan, but they don't have to actually come back and apply for that.
Okay. Brian, I see your hand up.
Oh, yeah, can you guys hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I'm not trying, I just, in my mind, when I'm thinking about the way a piece of land is subdivided, I'm thinking that it is kind of either kind of consistent with the patterns that you see for other parcels in the neighborhood, or it's not consistent. So the first question was really, could this be done with 3 rather than 4? Because what they are showing is concrete, and you've got 2 individual houses on 1 lot of property. So, I mean, there's a lot of layers to this, which I'm not trying to get into, but frankly, I'm just trying to make the point that I don't think that this is especially fitting of the neighborhood, and that's based on how the lots are broken down and how they're being proposed to be accessed. And I also made the point that I think if 3 was feasible, then you could have the same buildings or even more density in, potentially with much smaller driveways, more open space, less cutting down of trees. There's lots of, yeah. So if nobody wants to consider any of that, which is fine, it may not be timely. I just am trying to make the point that the way this subdivision is broken down, the way these parcels are broken down, does not seem in keeping with the character of the neighborhood to me.
Meredith?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna just, if you're talking about the layout, right? Give me 1 second. So here's a big picture of the whole area. I'm gonna do, and again, people can come up and take a look at this. Chris, if you wanna come up, I'll turn it around once I've got this set up. And we're digging into this pretty hardcore in detail, but,
Well, and I'm sorry, Meredith, I just want to make sure that at this point, these ideas weren't
Brian, hold on
overlooked.
a second, please. Thank you. That orange, for some reason it's not closing. That orange area is the parcel to be created. If you were talking about making that 3, then it would be way smaller than a whole bunch of the surrounding, I can't move my mouse around, the surrounding parcels around all of those, the bigger parcels. Like, it's actually, this smaller parcel is going to create a parcel that is similar in area, it's actually gonna create 2. Right,
Yeah, they're about 8,000 and change versus about 5,500.
Sorry.
Wait, we need to.
Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to respond to what you said, which is, yes, I'm with you and I'm following what you're saying. The parcels that are being proposed to be created are about 8,000 square feet and change. If that same parcel, that pie shape that you were showing, or half circle, was broken into 3 parcels, they would be about 5,500 square feet each. And just to be clear for the applicant, because there was a question about access and how that was being conceived maybe, I was proposing in the idea that of what would fit better into the pattern of the neighborhood, that each house or building, would each have a driveway that was accessed. So there would actually be 3 curb cuts. And this is very much in keeping with the neighborhood. You see a lot of single or double wide driveways in these neighborhoods. And they're very short, they 2 cars can park and then they back out onto the street. I think it's, we haven't seen any images of the neighborhood and what it looks like, but again, I live close by here and I can at least say that this has been my experience walking through this neighborhood for the last 3.5 years. And I think maybe there are others who live close who might also be able to attest to the access that is typical for sites in this neighborhood.
All right, I think I understand what you're saying, Brian. Were there other comments? Rob? Something? Meredith, did you want to speak?
Can I say something in response to Brian? One of the pieces of feedback that we got from a number of neighbors was that they were really interested in us trying to minimize the number of curb cuts, especially in that curve. Heaton Street is a really tight curve, it's hard to see, so the more driveways that we have accessing that, the more potential that there is for people coming and going onto that street without being able to be seen. So that was a goal of ours in the design, was to try to minimize points of access on Heaton Street.
I believe in Res 3, you're only allowed to have a curb cut 45 feet from the next driveway as well. So if you start stacking them in there, you'd be challenging that rule.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yes, in the last 5 years in this board, we've seen several dozen subdivision applications. You know, I guess some of them could be considered infill. Maybe they're just subdivisions, not actually infill. I don't know if we have an exact number as to how many of those new lots have actually been, built on. But I guess what I like about this application is it's a 3-lot subdivision infill housing in Montpelier. I think it's the most infill application at which we've seen on this board. And it seems like it's got legs and a solid plan to build it. We can talk about the character of the neighborhood. It's always sort of like a guide to make sure that we're not doing anything extravagantly different than what's there. But we also have to consider, the goals of the city plan. We have to consider sort of the other sort of intent for what the zoning regulation is even trying to achieve, in its goal. And that's our job as a board, to make sure that we're not just enforcing rules to say that your setbacks are 5 feet, so you don't go 6, because that's not gonna work for everyone in Montpelier, We're here to exercise discretion and to make sure that good projects that are well-designed go forward and get built, and meet, all of the goals of the regulations and all of the pieces in play, whether that's character of the neighborhood, the other provisions, the city plan, and the goal of city council and all of us here to, build more housing in this town. So, I think it's a great application. I think that it's consistent decision to sort of send this to the next step. Is very consistent with what we've seen, in the last 5-6 years I've been on this board. So
Yeah, agree with that. Someone else?
Yeah, just make sure you're close to the microphone, especially if you don't have a voice that carries.
I'm Carrie Sudal, and I live at the foot of Heaton Street. My driveway is on Heaton Street, but I'm right on the corner of Liberty and Heaton. And my major concern was like what you had said, the neighbors were concerned about a lot of cars being out on the street, because that is a curve and narrow and dangerous. So, I personally like that idea, the driveway and like that. But my question is, will people still be allowed to park on the street, or is that off limits to park on the street?
That is a DPW question to which I do not know the answer.
Okay, because I've lived there a long time and I've walked up there for years and years, and I never see parking on the street. People have driveways and more than one car. But Liberty Street, if you go down there, it's like an obstacle course. You can barely get down it, and I'd hate to see Heaton Street turn into that too, which is a more dangerous street because there's a hill and curves.
I've driven down that Heaton Street numerous times as well, and people don't generally park on that street because it is so narrow and it is a corner. And
I'm hoping that continues, and I think this is a good way to solve a problem, because it looks like there's plenty of parking right there.
Great. Thank you so much.
And you can't answer that question about
So the Department of Public Works makes decisions about when and where parking is allowed on city streets. that's not part of their
Okay.
proposal, it's not something the board can decide.
Okay,
And, under the zoning regulations, every new development in this neighborhood, doesn't happen in all neighborhoods, like not in downtown, but in this neighborhood, has to have a minimum amount of parking on the site
okay.
before a permit can be issued for it to be developed. So there is no requirement that at subdivision, they plan and specify exactly how much parking there will be, but part of the board's evaluation at subdivision is there gonna be room on the parcel for both some sort of development, minimum, a single family home, and a driveway with enough parking in it to get vehicles get at least one vehicle out of the public right of way. So, this clearly does that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Unless there are other comments, thank you.
Thank you very much, we appreciate your time.
We appreciate yours, thank you. Alright. You're next.
We're gonna let there's gonna be some paper shuffling as we transfer, so everybody just stay online if you're still interested in the last application. So we do have another application, so if you wanna talk, please go to the other side of the big yellow space.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Other side of the big yellow space. Sorry. It's echoey in here. Okay.
So this next application is, the applicant is State of Vermont Buildings and General Services. You can introduce yourselves and give me a brief description.
Good evening, I'm Joe Aja with Buildings and General Services.
I'm Ethan Dunker, I'm with Building and General Services.
Great. And your project is?
Before you, what we're looking to do is, the Department of Children's and Families is looking for emergency shelter space. We've been working on this for a while now, and it's an office space that was originally.
Guys, you gotta move it further out. Sorry.
Other side, but they're just at the other end of the hallway, not behind the wall.
Got it better define the other side.
Yeah, thank you, sorry about that.
And so what it is, it was originally an office building that was housed by Department of Liquor. Department of Liquor joined with Department of Lottery. They moved out into other space because it couldn't fit in that space. So right now it's been vacant. We had fitted up for other means a while ago for office space. And then we had the Department of Children's and Families coming forward looking for space for emergency shelter. And so we brought in the state fire marshal to evaluate the space, and they have basically put a limit of 10 individuals to be in that space.
And so this is the office building?
It is the office building, it's
Not
not
the
the warehouse. There is a slight difference in your numbering of buildings as opposed to the state has. We have the office building is 13 and the warehouse is 11, and you're 13, 15. But we are talking about the office space and not the warehouse. The warehouse is still the warehouse for liquor. They still have that in there, and there are trucks coming and going daily. So we're talking about the office space.
Okay. And 10 is maximum people?
Yes, it does not have it was an office space, it does not have a fire alarm system or sprinkler system in there, so this is why they're limited to 10. And so what we're looking for is to, right now, the plans are on hold with Department of Children and Families of actually starting it up. We thought we would continue, and the understanding is that, if it's not, is not needed for an emergency shelter, it would still be office space. So I don't know if that, I've understood that there's a possibility for dual usage, and that is sort of what we were looking for, is that
just.
So I would like to have one point of clarification with Meredith.
We have to step back.
We do, we need to swear you in because this is a final.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
As long as I don't have to redo this spiel.
No, you don't, no, you've heard all those things, and I'm really sorry, but we.
That's quite all right.
somebody skipped
Yep, and
the
we have a Lee Lauber, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, and Sean Beckett on remotely. I'm assuming David Delacour's on to report, but if Sean or Lee want to speak, and actually if David wants to speak, you all have to be sworn in as well, so you'll need to turn on your video so that we can see you raise your right hand and also be able to give your ayes after the swearing in.
Okay, everybody who's interested in saying anything on topic this evening for this hearing, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and under the pains and penalties of perjury? Anybody online? No.
And
All right, so thank you. I'm sorry about that. What I was asking for clarification for is I feel like this is slightly different in terms of what our window on this is. Would you like to describe that for me?
Yeah, so the application came up as, it's a conditional use application, right? I can't approve conditional uses.
Right.
We had a discussion, I had a discussion with the state last, I think it was Friday, sorry, it's a blur. About the fact that there was gonna be a stepping back and they wouldn't necessarily be immediately going to the emergency shelter use.
Right.
But they might wanna use the space for office use, which is what it was prior to the flood. So, my suggestion and what I'm hearing is having a little bit of an amendment to this application for the board to, one, give approval for the current, the change, the conditional use change. Under our zoning regulations, when you issue a zoning permit, there's 2 years minimum to be able to affect the change.
Right.
And so they would have 2 years to change it if you just opted to change it, and start making use of it. I'm honestly not 100% clear on whether or not the board has any authority over just an office use. It doesn't really trigger any of those 24 BSA 4413 factors that come into play.
Right.
And so, being able to, the board can either say, hey, we don't have authority over that, we don't think we do, we're not gonna worry about that, or say, we understand we're giving you a 2-year window or even a 3-year window to go to the emergency shelter use. You can give a little longer period than our normal expiration as part of the approval, conditional use approval.
Okay, so my understanding, oops, sorry,
No,
you done?
I think that's it. I think that's all I've got right now.
So, what I took away from that is that we don't need to do anything about the use of it as an office space, that we would not be here if it was simply used as an office space. That's what it is, it would never come in front of us. So my inclination is to deal with just the shelter aspect of it. And it also seems.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. There's also kind of this list of what we can deal with, and I'm just gonna share that with everybody. Because the emergency shelter will be operated by the state, the state-owned structure, limit zoning jurisdiction to location, size, height, building bulk, yards, courts, setbacks, density of building, off-street parking, loading facilities, traffic, noise, lighting, landscaping, and screening requirements, and only to the extent that the regulations do not have the effect of interfering with the intended functional use. So that is also a very skinny window.
Yes.
And the final closing argument there is regulating the daily or seasonal hours of operation of an emergency shelter shall constitute interfering with the intended functional use. So we don't have anything to say about that either. It doesn't sound like the outside of the building is gonna change at all?
We're not changing anything, and we make an amendment on our application. We actually had that construction cost of $70,000. Department of Children's Families decided not to go forward with a shower setup, so we're actually not doing any renovation to the building at all. We're just going to say it's an emergency shelter if and when it opens.
Okay.
Right, so there's no work outside the building, no work inside the building.
And that limit of 10 people was considering the existing conditions in the building?
Yes, by fire safety.
Okay. So if we were to move forward with an approval of the shelter, we could give you as many as 3 years before you have to come back in and do it again to build to that.
You can,
Yeah.
you can do that, to start that use. And then the other question is, if you're approving it as a multi-use, right? We've done that before, where there's sort of flex space. So it's two overlapping uses, it's just they won't be occurring at the exact same time in the exact same space. We've done that with other,
Okay.
right? So you could approve this use being, so that they wouldn't, if they use the emergency shelter for 6 months and then use it for office for some agency that needs
Right.
it for 6 months because their building's being renovated, and then go back to the emergency shelter, they don't necessarily have to come back to the board.
Okay.
That's a
And
possibility, I think.
would they need to come back to the board if we gave them the approval to the shelter, but not the office, because the office is existing and we wouldn't be involved in it? Do they necessarily need our approval once it's been?
I think as long as it's clear in the decision
Right,
that you're approving continued use of the office.
right. Or, yeah, I mean,
Right?
and it might not be contiguous, I get that.
Right,
so-
it might not be contiguous.
So, all right,
That it probably wouldn't be contiguous, right?
Right.
You need all the space for the
That is
for the
correct.
fire.
I think
Right.
if it's an emergency shelter, everything that goes along, and I don't wanna speak too much for DCF, but
Right.
basically, if it's an emergency shelter, there would not be office spaces.
okay.
So
If it
it's,
ceased to exist as an emergency shelter, then yes, we could then open it up for office.
So I would definitely be open to doing a multi-use approval. In the sense of covering both of those things. Other board members? Yeah. Okay,
On board.
yeah.
Brian, that sound make sense to you, Brian? Big thumbs up. I
Okay.
think we do need to, when we vote, we'll need to actually hear you, just as an FYI.
And a multi-use approval, essentially, it's one or the other versus,
Combination.
the combination. Because I think we've heard from the applicant that it would only ever be used
One
for
or the
one or
other.
the other, so
Yeah.
I'm just curious if that's the framing for a multi-use.
It depends.
Depends.
You could specify that,
Yeah.
or you don't have to.
I don't want to. Because I think that
The shelter needs an office too.
I think that there might be some.
No, I'm,
Yeah, yeah.
that's more a clarification question as opposed to.
Right, I mean, that's what I'm thinking, is to
Yeah.
leave it not as super defined, like you have to be one or the other at any point, just give them the okay for both uses and let them do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Do you guys have any questions?
I have none, I know there were some questions pointed out in here, like for parking and like that, there's
Yeah.
plenty of parking. We're not changing any lighting, there is lights on the entrance coming into the building, 2 lights, there's one on the ramp, there's also 2 power pole mounted lights. I think in the warehouse itself, there's lighting, there's also cameras on both buildings.
Comments from the member of the public? Okay. Can you get
Can
him?
one of you shift a little bit so that he's near the microphone?
Steve Whitaker, Montpelier. I've been working on the issue of sheltering folks for a number of years. I'm concerned here, one, that I hear that the plan for a shower was nixed. Somehow, through dysfunction of government oversight, our other shelter up at Country Club Road was open for a year without a shower. And to put folks, street folks, into congregate shelter without a shower is inhumane, it's undignified, it's irresponsible, it's cruel. And to be following this same kind of, the city said, oh, we don't have to inspect it, the state just inspected it for fire. I believe our own building codes require a shower if people are gonna live there, you know, a shower or a bath. So somehow we're advocating that at the city level, but at the state level, I wanna just caution, it appears that y'all are becoming complicit in the state's dysfunction around planning for the unhoused. That 10 people is a drop in the bucket of the number of unhoused people around here. And this is a poorly suited site with truck deliveries coming and going, no playground, no green space unless they walk further down the bike path. This is confinement. It's not dignified shelter. I mean, it's a good building. It could be a, you know.
I think everybody would agree with you that this is a drop in the bucket to the solutions that need to be put out there. But I don't think that that is something that.
I understand, but for the other reasons I stated, I would ask you to reject it, put the onus back on them to come back with a cogent plan for the number of unhoused people that are here. It's been required for years in law, and they have flagrantly violated the law by not coming forward with those plans, and then using a veto pen and again to throw people out of hotels. I just don't think you should enmesh yourself in this dysfunction of state government.
Thank you for your input. Any further questions?
I do have to get this answer, so I know my correct calculations right.
You're talking about the customers at the warehouse?
Yeah, no
There's no
customers.
customers at the warehouse?
Yeah.
Perfect, and sorry for everybody remotely, my paper went over the speaker.
So we're just determining that there are no customers.
Yep, no customers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. It's just one of those checkpoints. Yep, I was just skim through and see if there's any others.
You had another one in the application, doesn't provide specifics on how guests will arrive at the shelter, and we don't know how they will arrive.
Okay.
Well,
Could be
that's,
walking or driving.
You could require them to put a shower in before the shelter is allowed? No?
no, that's not one of the conditional use criteria. That's not something that this board can mandate, and because it's a state-owned and operated building, the city of Montpelier doesn't have authority building permit wise to do anything on that building. Our agreement with the state bars our building inspector from issuing those building permits. That's a state building permit.
All right, I entertain a motion. Come up with that. I do like the multi-use.
Right, we gotta tweak it a little bit,
Yeah.
what I drafted. Did you say add?
Assistance, 'cause my battery is out, it's not lasted this whole meeting.
Oh, sorry, oh, you didn't have a cord.
Yeah, right. It's fine.
To add an emergency shelter use. Yeah, I think if you do, yeah, because you're adding, you're not changing,
Yeah.
right? I think that works. Read it through, see what you think.
Yeah, I'll make a motion here, Sharon.
Yep.
Motion to grant the request for conditional uses and associated minor site plan approval to the building known as 15 Green Mountain Drive to add emergency shelter use with up to 10 beds as presented in the application and supporting and supplemental materials.
So you just added the emergency shelter.
add emergency shelter to the current
To the
use.
use, okay. That makes sense.
Instead of change or convert.
Yeah. Motion?
I'll second.
Let's do a roll call on this one. Brian, how do you vote?
Can we have a question
Oh, yeah.
first?
Oh,
Discussion.
sorry, hold on, Brian, discussion.
Hang on.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm in support.
Oh, yeah, hold on, Brian, we're having discussion real quick before we do a vote, sorry.
Okay,
The only I had in the motion was naming, number 10,
Oh,
and I don't know if you can limit us to that. I know the fire marshal has limited us, but I don't know.
So this is a mix up in the address.
No, it's not the address, it's the
so
number of people.
Yeah, so hold on, so it's not specifically excluded, the question is, does it go to traffic? Does it go to the traffic impacts, the number of 10, because traffic is one of the things that they can. But it's a fire marshal building code thing, if they make improvements to the building, it can have more people. Off-street parking. I calculated the off-street parking by beds, which is based on the number of people.
I thought you said we had enough.
What you do,
Right.
but you're saying if I add more than 10, if there's more than 10, that parking calculation goes up.
Okay. So it'll be based on.
Whatever number you.
So parking, because off-street
That's fine,
parking
and
is
you-
one of the
you-
allowances,
yes, you
the
can,
44 to 13.
absolutely.
So I'm not
Because of
trying,
the
I'm not trying to be difficult,
No,
I'm just
and
trying to
that's fine,
like,
I
link
totally
it to
agree
something
with
I
you, because of the
calculated.
parking, it's limited to 10.
So how
I'm good.
many, let me go back to see if there was extra or if, right, they
But they
limited
could
it to
improve
10,
the
but if they
building.
make improvements to the building and can have more, your decision right now limits it to 10. I mean, the application
Now
limits
it's
it to
limited
10,
to it.
so like,
So even if they fix
Um,
one, they'd have to.
parcel has 49 parking spaces,
Customer traffic.
with no customer traffic requires 22, so actually, yeah, and then 22 plus 12, minimum parking is 12 spaces for the emergency shelter, so that would bring you to 20, so you'd have way more, there's 49 spaces. So there's lots, so if for some reason you guys wanted to remove that 10 bed limit from the motion, you could.
You can limit us to parking.
Yeah, to limit to available, sorry.
Yeah,
That was
no,
a
I
good
see
point.
what you're saying. You're saying that,
If the site is in compliance with the parking requirements.
so that-
Yeah, so to emergency use, so long as the uses on the parcel meet minimum parking requirements. Which then also lets, if minimum parking requirements change, get lighter, it fluctuates.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask Meredith, is emergency shelter its own parking requirement category?
No, so in the staff report, so the
Okay, yeah,
zoning
okay, got it.
administrator
Yeah.
/ administrative officer has the authority to, when something doesn't fit in one of the specific categories, try and come up with something similar. And because emergency shelter is in the lodging area, and there will be some staff there, but there isn't the same kind of like large multi-space like conference spaces, things like that. Instead of using a hotel parking requirement, I made it equivalent to an inn.
Yeah.
For the amount of parking that would be required, so it was by bed and then they had a number for staff parking added in, it was like +2 or +1, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's in the
Yours
staff
too.
report, yeah,
Okay.
+2.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for catching that about the
Yeah.
beds, cause we can't regulate it. But
So-
so we, I don't know if you wanna, how you wanna do that.
okay, so, do I hear a motion to amend That's, I think that's what we did last time. Is there a motion to amend the motion?
So moved.
Yeah.
So we probably need to reread the amended motion, just because I wrote it out, but we didn't
All right.
clarify.
So the motion is amended to grant the request for conditional use and associated minor site plan approval to the building known as 15 Green Mountain Drive to add an emergency shelter use as presented in application Z 2025-0017 and supporting and supplemental materials, so long as the uses on the parcel meet minimum parking requirements.
And that's our final vote, and that's our amendment.
This is the amendment.
All those in favor?
Nope, you need a second, don't you?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Second to amend the motion.
Second to amend the motion? I'll second. Thank you.
I thought Rob just seconded. I'm confused.
Okay. All right, it is seconded. So
I
now-
got it as Rob seconding because
Okay.
he said it first.
Okay,
So hold on, I've got to make sure I've got Brian up.
okay,
Okay, Brian's up. Okay, so that's the motion to amend the motion.
right. It was motioned and it was seconded to accept the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
And now
yeah,
we're gonna
you
do
came
roll
through.
call and neighbor call.
Okay, so now it's amended.
Right, it's amended, so we can go from the original motion, can we?
Yep. So now it's a vote
Oh,
on the
right.
motion that's been amended.
Right, so it's a vote on the motion that has been amended. Brian, let's start out with you, yay or nay?
Yay.
Brian?
Try again. There's a delay.
Okay, yay.
Okay, good. Joe?
Yay.
Rob?
Yes.
Yes? Yes? And that is everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for bearing with
Thank
our
you.
technical difficulties this evening. Number 5,
Okay, so that's your verbal decision.
the written decision.
Basically, I do the written decision and Chair tonight will need to then review it, sign it. That's when the appeal period starts. So we will get that to you as soon as possible. And at some point, somebody will have to come and pick up and sign for the actual copy, the handwritten copy of it, because there's no pre-permit conditions. We'll be able to issue the permit the same day that we have the decision signed. So, I will probably email you a copy of the decision, but then you'll need to come and sign for it, because we don't really rely on certified mail going very well. We have people sign the certified mail card in our office, because ever since COVID, it's been random. So
That's
I'll
not a
email
problem.
you,
Okay.
let you know when it's all ready.
No problem, you're just down the street, that's easy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
Was it what?
Yep. Hold on a sec, because Tammy's still gonna have to hear. For, okay.
Could I ask you to consider making a statement to council that you need more tech support to get your audio, because Orca shouldn't be providing your audio,
Can we finish the business?
well, this is business, because if you're gonna vote to ask council for money to
Wait,
get.
can we wait till other business?
Oh, I didn't know.
There's an other business on every agenda.
Yeah. So the matter right now that we're dealing with is the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody got a chance to look at those?
I did review the minutes prior to, and I motion to approve them.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Huh, yeah, Brian, try it again, there's a delay.
Aye.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitaker, you'd like to note that we should ask the council for additional money so that we are not working under such backwards code quality. Thank you, that is noted.
We can throw it in with the rest of the renovations to City Hall when the FEMA money
No,
comes
you
in.
can't wait that long.
It was noted.
Yeah, Well, it
Because
was
if you
noted,
continue
it
on
was
open
noted.
meeting law violations, this is absurd.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your input. Here's this. Oh, wow.
Okay, other business, so next regular meeting, April 21st.
And we do have applications for that day?
Yep, we do.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got, 5 Home Farm Way, deconstruction slash demolition of a historic structure, so that has to come to you. And then, I honestly, right now, I can't remember what the second one is.
That's okay. We're gonna come anyway.
It's on the public hearing notices
Yeah.
that got published. I just can't remember right now. Okay.
Anything else from anybody?
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?